We now welcome on our first-time guest, Josh Callaway. He is the multimedia director, assistant editor of All Sooners, and the host of the All Sooners podcast. Josh, did I get that right?
You nailed it. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but you nailed it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I did it. He's rocking the mustache just like Mark. I'm trying to rock mine as
Yes,
well.
sir.
Josh, the reason we had him on, he's in Dallas. Or is it in Dallas? The Big 12 Media Days? I don't remember.
Arlington, right?
Arlington,
Yeah.
Cowboy
Arlington.
Stadium. So yeah,
See,
close
okay,
enough.
so Josh, I'm kind of older. When I went to Big 12 Media Days, when I was a journalist, it was in Dallas at the Omni in downtown Dallas. So I never got to go to like Jerry's World and see like the cool stuff that they had at Jerry's World. So
the first time I went, it was actually at the Star in Frisco.
Yeah,
that's where it was, and then they
that.
moved it over to Cowboy Stadium. That's where it's been the last, I don't know, few times. But it's a good event. Big 12 Media Days is a good event. You look at, I've never been to the other conferences media days, but when you look at them on TV and stuff, they all look like they're always in like a hotel or something. Like they look like they're a lot more compact. Big 12 Media Days is very big, open. It's a good event. You know, people make fun of the Big 12, but it's they do a pretty nice job, I think, relatively.
Yeah,
having Jerry World in Dallas is such a regional advantage to the Big 12. Like that Big 12 championship game, media day, all of it. Jerry's right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, SEC Media Days in Hoover, Alabama is like they take over the entire hotel. Like that's all it is SEC Media. I've never seen anything like it. And you'll probably get to experience it in a couple of years when OU goes down there. So we brought you on. We wanted to talk to you about Big 12 Media Days starting on Wednesday. If you're listening to this, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. We're going to air this on Wednesday morning. You'll hear this when you wake up. So it'll be Big 12 Media Days time. And for me, Josh, it always feels like the unofficial start of football season. I know there's a lot of unofficial starts, but for me, as a guy who's been to Big 12 Media Days, this really feels like the start of football season. What do you think?
I agree completely. You know, it feels like it's when you start to turn the corner a little bit. You get those preseason polls and, you know, the preseason all conference teams and stuff like that. And this is, Big 12 Media Days is awesome. It's an opportunity because obviously we look forward to, we haven't heard from, you know, in this case, Brent Venables or any of these players in over, 3 months since the spring game. That's the last time we got to hear from any of these guys, really. And while we look forward to that, it's also an opportunity to hear from the other 9 teams. I mean, how many times do we get the chance to go talk to Mike Gundy or, Dave Aranda or whatever? I mean, it doesn't really happen over the course of a season. So it's nice to get that opportunity. It does feel like you kind of start to turn a corner this year, especially with just all the change. There's some more interest. I mean, new commish, new realignment has happened. I mean, last year when Big 12 Media Days happened, it was pre SEC move. He was even announced. You know what I mean? So a lot has happened since the last time we got to do this. It is a fruitful event. It's nice, and I agree completely. It feels like the start of football in a sense because you're just a couple weeks after this is when fall camp starts, and OU will have their media day, their local one in Norman, and so it feels like this is kind of the kickoff. Everybody kind of gets their vacations in before this, and it's like everybody comes back from vacation, everybody gets down to Arlington. It's kind of kicks it off in a way of, all right, kind of lock back in because season is right around the corner.
So, Josh, what are you most looking forward to hearing besides the OU crowd? Because you just talked about it. This is really the first time or the only time all year that we get to hear about other coaches. Baylor picked to win the conference, 17 first place votes. Are you looking forward to hearing what Dave Aranda and that Baylor squad has to say? Or maybe is it Steve Sarkisian or Mike Gundy, like you said? What are you looking at?
Yeah, there's a lot, frankly. I mean, for all the OU stuff, because we got to talk to, Venables and these guys about that SEC move and stuff like that. Texas, for sure. I mean, Steve Sarkisian and that group, the guys who are left behind, Oklahoma State especially. Obviously, there was a lot of animosity there, when the move was announced last year. I think, the news since then, the teams that they're bringing in, obviously the Big Ten moves, and there's a lot that's happened since last year's Big 12 Media Days. A full season of NIL, how's that playing out? How have the teams and coaches seen that, shaking out over the first year of that being a thing? Obviously, I mean, there's a lot of intrigue. Baylor, certainly being the, I don't know, I guess the top dog in a sense. I mean, defending champs, preseason number one. That's not something they're totally used to, obviously. So that is certainly interesting. I mean, OU's been number one in the preseason every year since 2015. I mean, it's been a long time since they weren't the projected to win the conference, usually going away, usually heavy favorite, So it's a bit of a different looking league this year than it has been in the past. So definitely some intrigue there. It's always fun to hear from new guys too, like Sonny Dykes, coming in, Joey McGuire, just the ones you haven't got to hear from yet. We don't know them very well. We don't really totally know what they're like, and you kind of know from afar, but it's nice to get to actually hear them, in press conference format. Because obviously, and from being there, you have your press conference, which is a big one, big open. It's, hundreds of media literally, but then they do the breakouts, which is really when it's at its best because it's everybody's available at once for like an hour, 2 hours, however long it is. And that's when you get to really get the chance to go just kind of walk around and talk to everybody. So I look forward to that kind of a thing because this is always a fun event because while it's a start of football for us and it's all that, it's a start of football for a lot of these guys too. Everybody's in a good mood at Big 12 Media Days. Everybody's cracking jokes. Everybody's feeling good. Everybody's 0-0. Everybody, it's one of those type of things. So it's fun to get here from the new guys and certainly just all the changes in college football in general since the last time we did this is going to be interesting to hear about.
The point you made about OU being favored every year since 15 and this year not being favored, the football aspect of it is so interesting to me, and how teams like Baylor, teams like Oklahoma State, historically we are like kind of the big dog with the target on our back. And this year, that's not really the case, right? They're downplaying Venables and OU's dead, whatever. That's all overspoken. But I'm excited to see how these guys approach their positions as, hey, we might be the guy in this conference now. We might, like Dave Aranda, Mike Gundy, these guys who are at the top. Do you think we'll see a different tone from some of these coaches who have constantly had to look up at OU, now sort of thinking they're eye to eye?
Yeah, I'm very interested in that because it's such a weird dichotomy this summer of, it seems like half of, the country wants to throw dirt on Oklahoma. It's kind of painted them as the next Nebraska, kind of going to fall off a cliff because of the move and because of Lincoln leaving and all this stuff. And the other half are still saying they're going to be just fine. Brent Venables is going to be just fine. But I do think that pretty much across the board, and obviously when you're around the team all the time, like I am, or obviously you guys, if you have the team all the time, we see it as it's going to be fine. And, I'd be surprised if it's not fine. And I don't think they're going to fall off much at all. But I do think that generally OU is looked as vulnerable right now. This is the kind of the time to strike pretty much on Oklahoma, this transition. They did lose a significant amount, obviously, in the transfer portal and the draft. They're vulnerable right now. They're beatable as they've been. So I'm curious if, especially the players, I don't think Dave Aranda is going to say anything or Mike Gundy. I mean, Dave Aranda especially is extremely soft-spoken. He's never one to say anything too bulletin board or anything. But some of these players, especially in those breakouts, like I mentioned, some of these players, if you might get them to say something about.
That's the right question here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to be the fun part because I think definitely, and especially the first day. I'm used to Oklahoma always going on the first day. It seems like they're always one of the first teams up. They don't go until day 2 this time. So that first day, Baylor and Oklahoma State are both going. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to hear from those guys and kind of, especially Spencer Sanders has shown a willingness to like last year in the lead up to Bedlam, he's shown a willingness to speak up. I think there's some interesting potential there from those guys.
I cannot believe he's still around.
Yeah, I know.
And then Mason goes, but I cannot believe it.
It's crazy. And it's funny you mentioned Spencer Sanders. It's something that I wanted to get to now. He is the first team all Big 12 quarterback based on voting. If you don't follow Josh on Twitter, you should, at Josh M. Callaway. He has some really good tweets. You had one earlier in the week or it was last week, I should say, when these teams came out, and it was Brent Venables saying team 128, you will get what you earn. Dirty hard work in the dark. And you said quickly learning that Brent Venables may not necessarily seem like the type, but this dude definitely keeps receipts. And I completely agree with that statement. He definitely seems like that kind of guy. How motivated do you think this team is going to be? And were you shocked as a voter that Michael Turk was really the only guy? Well, you can include Dylan Gabriel as a newcomer, but the only guys that were on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start there. I do think it was a little surprised. I mean, they have some all Big 12 caliber guys on this team. I mean, I understand that there is a bit of a transition, a bit of unknown with the team. I mean, Marvin Mims is an all Big 12 receiver to me.
That's the one.
I think Woody Washington certainly has an argument. Key Lawrence has an argument. Jalen Redmond has an argument. Maybe Jalen Redmond, when he's healthy, the only year he's really been healthy, he led the Big 12 in sacks. You know what I mean? So, but, I do think that this team absolutely is feeding off this big time. Everything we just said, throwing dirt in Oklahoma, next Nebraska, going to fall off a cliff. And now no all Big 12 guys except for their punter. And but that being said, they're still picked second. But even so, looking forward to, the opportunity to be the underdog. So Oklahoma doesn't get to be in the Big 12 very often. And they're certainly going to be that. And Brent Venables, to go back to that point, he seems like an old school guy and everything, but he absolutely makes notes of these types of things, and he's ready to prove people wrong himself. He hears it. He hears it. There's a lot of people, which is kind of crazy, but there's a lot of people that doubt Brent Venables' ability to lead a program himself. And he's never done it, and I get that. But, I mean, Lincoln Riley had never done it. Bob Stoops obviously had never done it. First-time head coach is what OU does. You know what I mean? So I definitely think he's making notes. He's telling these guys, and that Team 128 thing has been one of his biggest staples, one of his biggest things he brings up all the time in terms of, the previous 127 teams don't really matter. It's about this year's team, and telling these guys that OU is great. They're going to continue to be great, but this is your chance to make this year's team yours. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting. I'm interested. That's one of the more intriguing aspects for Oklahoma specifically at Big 12 Media Days. It's just because it's going to come up, no Big 12 guys, only pick second this year, first time in 7 years, stuff like that. That's going to come up, and I'm curious to hear what these guys say, certainly here in the next couple of days.
Do we know who Texas is sending? Is Quinn Ewers going?
I have it. Quinn Ewers is not going, I'm pretty sure. I have it right here, though.
I wouldn't send him either. Okay, that was my question was a follow-up for a Quinn Ewers appearance, but I don't think.
Yeah, Roshan Johnson, Bijan Robinson, Demarion Overshone, and I struggle with the name Ogufu, the line defensive end.
Hey, you'll find out tomorrow, or you'll find out tomorrow how you say it, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly. I've never had to say it, but we just read it.
Day 3.
Yeah. So, Josh, my next question is: we see the guys who are going: Dylan Gabriel, Ethan Downs, Marvin Mims, Woody Washington. To me, Big 12 Media Days always kind of means like who you send is who you want representing your team. And Brent Venables takes that to heart 100%. And seeing that roster of guys who are going down there, OU fans may not realize, but quarterbacks at OU haven't gone to Big 12 Media Days in the past, like in a long time. So the fact that Dylan Gabriel, his first year on the team, going down to represent this team says a whole lot to me about what Brent Venables and this staff thinks of him right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Baker was the last time quarterback went. I know it's going to come off as a Lincoln bashing thing, and I don't really mean it that way, but it's refreshing in that there's not this hiding of guys, keeping Spencer Rattler back, keeping not any fake quarterback battle, which is nice. Jeff Lebby announced that Gabriel's going to start. Like it was like January before they even done it. Yeah, he's going to start. Like he's obviously going to start. You know what I mean? I really appreciate that because we've had just kind of silliness in this area for the last several years, and that was part of it, was not sending Spencer Rattler to Big 12 Media Days last year, which seemed like such a weird move. And it feels like forever ago, but that was a hot topic last summer, was how are they not sending Spencer Rattler? That's crazy.
Yeah, he can make time to be in Chicago signing autographs, but he's not at Media Day. Yeah.
So it has been refreshing in that regard that they've been throwing Gabriel right out there. And that speaks to the whole spring too. I mean, we got just about every single player of consequence at all in the spring at some point, which, again, not to just bash on Lincoln or anything, but it was very guarded before. We didn't get Caleb Williams all season. You know what I mean? We didn't get to hear from a lot of players. We only heard from about the same 10 or 15 guys all year. In the spring, we heard from just about literally everyone. They throw everybody out there. They're very open. We got to go to practice a few times. You know what I mean? It was very open throughout the spring. I think this is part of it. And it does speak to what they think of Dylan Gabriel. And Brent Venables has spoken really highly of him. Stepped in as an immediate leader. All the players seem to love him. Receivers are excited to play with him. He had that dime time retreat. I'm sure you guys saw where he invited a bunch of the guys out. They had a big event thing. It's cool stuff, cool stuff, leader stuff. And it seems like everybody's really embracing him. He's been awesome when he's got to talk to us. He's a super well-spoken kid, and he's ingratiated himself quickly. And that goes to show it. So it is nice that he's going to be there. While it may seem obvious, like you said, I mean, it's first time since Baker. Kyler didn't get to go. Spencer Rattler didn't get to go. Jalen Hurts didn't go. It's been a long time since we got to actually have the quarterback there. So it's going to be a nice little change of pace.
I think it speaks a lot to what this staff and administration, I guess, sees out of Gabriel, that
Mm-hmm.
since his transfer, he's almost been like a part of the brain trust with them, as far as
Yeah,
he's the one on the offense, calling out the plays, shouting at people. It's not Jeff Levy sprinting onto the field during the spring game. He's on top of it. He's organizing the dime time retreat. At least for this year, it seems like they've decided, hey, Dylan, you're our guy no matter what, unless, we start 2-3, something crazy.
sure.
We're hitching our wagon to you. Go lead this team. And this is just another example of that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and they've put a lot of faith in him, a lot of eggs in that basket. And look, I mean, obviously the players admitted that spring was really hard. I mean, they're learning a new offense, and Jeff Levy's offense is really fast. I mean, you guys saw that in the spring game. It's absurd how quickly that they run through. The defense in spring was talking about, geez, they're going to keep guys winded because they go really fast. And It helps that Dylan Gabriel has experience there, with Levy back at UCF, and they've leaned on him. And I can't remember who it was. Somebody offensive line said that Gabriel will frequently call out their blocking assignments for them, before plays. And he's kind of the offensive coordinator on the field, and they need that because, I mean, defense is learning new stuff, offense is learning new stuff. While a lot of the offensive staff is the same, obviously it's a totally different offense with Levy running it instead of Lincoln. And so there's a lot of learning being done on the fly here for this team. So the fact that Dylan Gabriel isn't having to learn as much, your quarterback, really helps. And he can kind of be a de facto coach, kind of in a way. And he's a very mature guy, and the leadership stuff comes natural to him. So that part's just kind of gravy. But yeah, no, they're really leaning on him hard. That's why it's been extremely important they keep him healthy, obviously, because behind him it's a lot of inexperience. They had to get somebody in the transfer portal, and they did. Davis Bell from Pittsburgh, who's got a little bit of experience, at least more than what they had before.
General Booty too. I'm high on
General
him.
Booty. Yeah, General Booty from the JUCO ranks. I mean, they're obviously all their eggs are in the Gabriel basket for sure, and he's they've thrown him right to the forefront as being a face of the program type of guy right away. Let him play both teams in the spring game, stuff like that. I mean, he's right away as, this is our guy. He'll be a captain, I'm certain. And all that. He stepped right in as, kind of a face of the program type of thing, which is what you want, from your quarterback.
It seems like all four guys they sent could be captains. Like this was a true captaincy.
Downs is crazy impressive. It's been awesome to see how quickly he's risen. He was the biggest surprise. Mims and Woody and Gabriel were all kind of like almost givens that they would be there. I was surprised that Ethan Downs is going down, but not at the same time. I'm surprised, but not, because he is really well-spoken, program guy, company man type of thing. He's awesome, and he's a really talented player. He's going to be really good. He's got potential to be great by the time his time's done. I got to call him a couple times in high school at Weatherford. It was hilarious. He would just dominate people. He played both offense and defense, and he's been great so far. And you can see him quickly, kind of climbing the ladder as a leader and all that kind of stuff. The fact that they're sending him to media days speaks a lot about him as a younger guy.
Right.
I'm not asking you to break down the overall media psyche or break down, other people's psyche outside of the OU football program. But we struggle on the podcast week in and week out. Why is Brent Venables so undervalued? Why is this hire on the outside of the OU program? People seem to have little to no faith that this is the same guy who produced draft pick after draft pick at Clemson, had one of the best defenses in the nation year in and year out at Clemson, won a couple national titles at Clemson. Why does it seem as though that doesn't matter anymore? Is it just because it's easy to get OU fans riled up? Because that's fair. I can support that argument.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it sounds extremely simplistic, but I think it may partially just be because Brent's not overly flashy. He's not Lane Kiffin. He's not going to be tweeting a bunch of crazy stuff. He's not all offense, scoring 60 points. He's an older guy. He's not a young hot shot. He's in his 50s. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think it might just be kind of that simple. He's been on the radar for so long. I mean, people know Brent Venables is. He's been the DC at one of the most successful programs that there is for the last decade. And Clemson got multiple rings to his name. I think I don't know if it's a strange thing. And like I said before, there's been a lot made of like he's never been a head coach before, and it's like, well, Lincoln had never been. It's like these weird things you could easily poke holes in, these weird arguments. But you know what? We'll see. It's been strange. I think people are having a hard time grasping the identity change too for Oklahoma. They become so well known for offense and not a lot of defense that it's going to take like. And even when last year, where the defense really was like winning them games at times, it still took people forever to come around to the fact that like they're not all offense anymore. They really are much more balanced, and now it's going to be defense driven, at least at the start. I think because it's going to take a little bit of time for this offense to catch up. I think so. It is strange. I think generally national reporters maybe just have a hard time seeing everything. I mean, it's easy for me. I cover one team. I'm able to see. I mean, I remember seeing. I honestly can't even remember who it was. It was like a pre-spring top 25 or, so one of those types of things.
Oh God.
And it had notable transfer additions listed for the teams. And it didn't have, for Oklahoma, it had like 5 guys and Jeffrey Johnson was not even on there. And I would say he's behind Dylan Gabriel, maybe the next most important transfer they got. And that's right. Kind of that's a small example, but that's kind of speaks to the larger point of like, they just don't see everything with every team. So it's kind of important to take all that stuff with a grain of salt, because Oklahoma did a really good job in the transfer portal. And I think the stuff that's hard to quantify is how much better some of these guys are just going to get by having just better coaching. I mean, Todd Bates is as good of a position coach as there is in college football. Like, we don't think that obviously Jeffrey Johnson and Redmond and these guys aren't going to just absolutely take off under him, or specifically for linebackers has been a big one for me, because linebackers were somewhat disappointing last year. That's Brent's forte. And you have Agwebu and Deshaun White and these guys who look like NFL players now, like the way their bodies are and stuff. They were kind of underwhelming. I don't think that's going to be an issue now, with Brent and this defensive staff. So, and Schmitty, obviously, getting them to their peak physical condition and stuff like that. So I think it may be hard for people to totally grasp all the changes. And also it's important to note that from afar, again, when you watch OU every week and you cover them, you could see how the program was not going in the direction that people thought it was going to be going under Lincoln Riley. Whereas I think from a wider lens, people just view Oklahoma as they were just rolling right along. They had another great quarterback. They're playing, all these, they were on track to maybe win the Big 12 again. They don't see the issues from afar that were clearly there when you watch a team every week. They had regressed, and 2021 was massively disappointing. I mean, when we did our preseason show last year, it was championship or not. Like, that was the conversation. Was this team going to win the Natty or not? They obviously didn't even play for the Big 12 title. It was an extremely underwhelming season. So I think that's part of it too, is that they don't see how it was kind of not going the right direction, and that this was a change that OU fans really wanted. And as soon as Lincoln left, it was Joe Castiglione and this team, they wanted to go a totally different direction, and they did. Brent is the anti-Lincoln in almost every way. They're totally opposite guys. Recruiting philosophy, offense, defense, all of it, personality, they're totally, totally different. And so it's going to take people a minute to kind of adjust to Oklahoma being just, a totally different program now.
Awesome. We're going to get you out of here on this. I got one more thing for you, and
Sure.
Really appreciate your time. But Baylor picked to win the conference. How did your vote shake out, if you did vote? And we asked Eric Bailey this before the spring game. What is a realistic expectation for OU fans to expect out of this 2022 version of the Oklahoma Sooners?
Yeah, full disclosure, I didn't submit my ballot.
You're not the only one. Some people think the ballots are BS. So
yeah.
I've just figured I'd ask you,
Yeah, I didn't do it. I would have picked OU to win the Big 12 if I had. I mean, I didn't mean to, and I just didn't get around to it.
No one's going to be mad at you.
You look at how many first place votes there are and how many people go to the Big 12 media days. There's a lot of people that don't submit their ballot.
Yeah, 100%.
I learned that pretty quick. I was like 17. That's it. There's like hundreds of people there. But
because they send those ballots to everybody.
Yeah,
they send them to everybody.
Yeah, everybody gets a ballot. So, but I would have picked Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's the best team in the Big 12. I mean, I have a high reverence for that defensive staff, especially. I just really think that Miguel Chavis and Todd Bates and even Jay Valai and Brandon Hall and Venables. And I just think that the defense is going to be noticeably better right away. I really do, because they have talent there. Like I said, I mean, Jalen Redmond and these linebackers, and they have a lot coming back. The secondary should be a lot better. I mean, I look back there, the guys they added, Trey Morris from North Carolina, I really like. Key Lawrence is going to take a big step up, I think. I think the defense can be a lot better. So I would have picked them to win the Big 12. I think they're a really good team. And obviously, if you win the Big 12, you're in position for playoff if things break your way. I mean, their schedule is relatively friendly again. I mean, they don't have to go. I mean, they go to Lincoln, which is maybe trickier than it would seem because Nebraska was better than their record last year. I don't think that's a gimme by any means, but I think their non-conference is pretty friendly relatively, relative to some past years. They don't have like an Ohio State on there or anything like that. And then, they get to play Baylor at home. They get Oklahoma State at home. They get Kansas State at home. You know what I mean? So schedule's pretty friendly for the most part. I think that they can win the Big 12, certainly. I expect them to. And then when they do, they're probably going to be in the playoff. Now, I think that their talent is going to take a little time to catch up, to the top dogs right now because this is a transition year. 2021 was supposed to be the year, and then they were going to maybe take a little transition into 23, which was supposed to be Caleb Williams' big shot at a title next year. But they're going to be really good. They're going to be right there. I think they win the Big 12, and when you do that, you're pretty much automatically in position to make the playoff. Because the way I've always talked about OU for a long time is a one-loss Big 12 champion Oklahoma is going to make the playoff 99% of the time, barring something very strange to happen elsewhere. And I think that's probably about where they land is no more than one loss. They win the Big 12 and they're in the playoff at the end of the year. And then we'll see how it shakes out from there. But sky's the limit. I think they're going to be really good. I don't the over-under of like 9.5 wins, 8.5 wins. I'm hammering the over.
Wild.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff, man.
I don't see where the losses are.
No.
But we'll see. And the fact that Dylan Gabriel's the best quarterback in the league, in my opinion, also. So
Dude.
that certainly helps.
Josh,
he's the only one we've seen do it,
Yeah.
right? It's him or freaking Adrian Martinez now, and give me Dylan Gabriel.
I love how we have a running, not even a joke on the podcast, but we all kind of try to tell each other to calm down, let's not overshoot for the stars or whatever. And then I ask you for a logical, expectation for this team. You're like, oh yeah, win the Big 12 and playoff. And I'm
baby.
All in. I'm all in.
Right
now.
I mean,
absolutely, 100%. Josh is absolutely right.
It's like I said, I look at the schedule and I just don't see where the losses are. That's my main thing. Texas is always going to be tricky. It's always going to be tough. That should be a lot of fun. It's the best game in the world. Getting down there for that. And then, but you just look at the rest of the schedule and it's like I said, they have all those big games mostly are at home. As long as you avoid a tricky Nebraska loss early, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. K-State should be better, but again, you get them at home. I mean, it's just schedule's pretty friendly. And Dylan Gabriel is, I think, pretty wide margin best quarterback. I mean, he's got 70 touchdowns. It's not like he's coming from nobody. He's got 70 touchdowns and 8,000 yards under his belt. I mean, he was a good quarterback at UCF before with not as much weapons around him and not as good of a line and all that. So expectations should be pretty high, I think.
Mark, anything before we let Josh go?
No, I'm good, man. Josh, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys.
Once again, be sure to follow Josh on Twitter at Josh M. Callaway. That's M as in Mason. Good for you, Josh. Be sure to listen to the All Sooners podcast, All Sooners podcast with Josh, and check out All Sooners as he's the assistant editor and multimedia director there. Josh, thanks so much. Have fun at Big 12 Media Days, and be sure to tweet us some cool stuff. Call people program guys, and we'll retweet it every single time.
Absolutely. Oklahoma has a lot of those right now. Porter Moser and Skip Johnson. They have a lot of program guys right now.
A lot of good guys at the helm.
Yeah, Brent Venables is popping up to softball games and junk. He's a definition of a program guy.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Josh.